Hey everyone, we were just chilling in the backstage thinking we're live, but we were not, but we finally are. Hi Leon.
Hey, so how's it going?
Good. So I think we can get going. To the attendees, one cue before we get started, we are recording this webinar to send over to all of you, as well as the other registrants after this session. So if you are not comfortable being recorded as is, you are not going, like your video or audio are not going to be shared, but if you're not comfortable, for your questions being recorded, then you'd need to drop out. All right, so I think we can get going. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm really glad to talk to Leon today about Garak, one of the probably the most famous open source LLM vulnerability scanner right now. We are going to be discussing in detail his motivations of starting Garak, the core concepts in Garak, and then roll into how Garak can be useful to you to scan LLM vulnerabilities, and also how you can contribute and use it going forward to sort of enrich the ecosystem and building the community around AI security. So without further ado, let me briefly introduce Leon and then hand it off to him. Leon Derczynski, he's an associate professor in ITU Copenhagen. As you all know, he's the founder of Garak. Besides that, he's also very active in the AI security community. He's been a founding contributor in the OWASP Top 10 LLM effort. He's been a very active member of the AI vulnerability database community as well. Besides all of that, Leon is also a principal research scientist in NVIDIA as well, where he works on AI security and related open source efforts. So with that, Leon, I'll turn it over to you. Feel free to sort of share your slides, and then we can roll into sort of the conversational part.
Let's do that. Cool, Subho. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Very fancy introduction. I hope we still have some time left. Cool. Yeah.
Right. So, Leon, I was wondering that if you could sort of, while talking through, it would be great if you could talk about your motivation of starting Garak. Like what led to, what was the thought process that led to you sort of thinking that, hey, something like this could be useful, and then developing your path forward from making things sort of this kind of vague idea of vulnerability scanning to actually making things concrete?
Yeah, good question. I guess, I mean, LLM security isn't an old field. I think there are a few of us who have 1 year's experience now in LLM security. And when I started digging around, I mean, it goes back a little older, a little further back. There are kind of backdoor efforts and this kind of thing. But once we saw generative AI really turn a corner in late 2022, people got really creative with it, right? And those motivated people who are good at finding exploits, I don't know if it's the same people, but the same behavior was something we saw with LLMs as well. People just subverting these systems to do things they shouldn't do, or they're not intended to do, or that go against expectations. So we had these kind of really cool generative AI systems like ChatGPT, right, or Claude, or Bard, or Sydney, right, from Microsoft for a cute month or two before that was changed. And we could see these were being deployed, and there was a massive rush to go and use these tools. But also, they were very easy to subvert, and people were finding they could be subverted in wonderfully creative ways, right? So I was looking at this, and I kept thinking, like, loads of these kind of misbehaviors, these things we don't want models doing, like coming up with really biased statements, or giving people instructions on how to harm themselves or others, right? We don't really want models generally producing this content. And I thought this must be something that we can build a detector for, right? We could build a gradient for, put it in, I don't know, like one of the experts in an MOE model, and it will get trained away. So I won't bother doing anything about it, was my initial thought. I gave it a month, the models didn't get better. Gave it another month, the exploits got better, the models didn't get better. I thought, okay, well, fine. I guess mostly, if I'm completely honest, I have a little bit of frustration, right? Just sat down and thought, let's build this architecture so we can, I don't know, collect. It felt like exploits at the time. I think now we have a much better handle on how we use that word and payloads and vulnerabilities in the LLM context, but it felt like Yeah, exploits, let's just kind of group them together and make it possible, at least for people to test their LLMs, right? Because, I mean, maybe you've seen this kind of metaphor, right? That we have these kind of models that look kind of nice, but underneath, like if you start peeling back the metaphorically peeling back the metaphorical layers, there's just who knows what underneath, right? And kind of some people are concerned about X risk, and they say the models are not things one can trust. Other people don't believe in X risk at all, right? But AI X risk at least, but are worried about the ethics of the models, and they say we don't. And they also kind of both agree in a way, right? Like nobody really knows what the training data is that's gone into here. Nobody knows where the training data has come from. I think if you assume that your LLM hasn't got any poisoned data in any of that terabyte of web scraped stuff, I mean, this seems like one of the most naive claims I could think of, right? Like we're almost guaranteed multiple actors have planted poison data in there. And just because we have some unsupervised learning and then a bit of SFT and then some RLHF or instruct on the top doesn't really protect us very much. And we know this, right? Now that we can go and do some of that security testing. And so built Garak to try and wrap some of those vulnerabilities, right? Try and detect some of the failure modes, because really we're trying, my philosophy with Garak is just to try and get those generative models, those language models to fail, right? Go and pose adversarial things out. And there are hundreds, thousands of talented people building these, but also they're really creative people. I don't think everyone happens on these kind of adversarial prompts just accidentally, right? I mean, you've worked in security, you know how it is. It's a special kind of mindset to go from seeing armor to building an exploit, right? You need some talent, you need some experience to do that. So let's kind of wrap all that up a little bit and bring it out to everyone and open source it so that people can start to analyze models by themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned security mindset, Leon. I think that's something that we could all do a lot with in the AI community, in the sense that finding and fixing flaws in this new kind of quote unquote intelligent software that requires proactive effort. And that is basically the step zero of security mindset. So I love that you're kind of grounding this exploration in that motivation. Yeah, 100%. As we go about all of this, before moving forward, I just want to confirm with you, Leon. As we get questions in the Q&A, would you like to answer them as they come, like as we pause in the middle, or all in the end?
I mean, I think we have some time, right? And
sure. Yeah.
It's nice of people to give us their time to come and attend. We can pick them up as we go along. Should we do that? Should we both try and keep an eye on that?
Yeah, let's do that. So we do have two questions right now from Neeraj. First one that he is asking if you use LLMs to create prompts while scanning models, or is it hard coded?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on the exploit, right? So there's some adaptive probes here within Garak that will look, I mean, they'll try and get the model to do something that we don't really want it to do, and then they'll adapt to the model's response, right? So then they kind of use the model output as its own prompt. And so we have these adaptive probes. And then there are some probes where there's kind of an intersection of templates, right? Like we know different prompts work differently, and you got to get some variance in there. They can be quite brittle, right? Which is one of those things you really have to compensate for. So there's a mix. And then there are some prompts where we know, like there's the whole Dan family, right? I think not quite, somewhere around 1,000 prompts where people have, like communities really have been working together on putting together sometimes quite long paragraphs with a complicated narrative. And then you put in this whole thing precisely, and then at the end, the model just gives you an indication that it's flipped and now will ignore its safety training, right? And so these ones are just taken wholesale. And even some of these have acted like, there are libraries of Dan prompts. And I mean, you could just take those libraries if you're an LLM provider and look, if your input matches like 90% plus, decline the request, but still these have worked against like OpenAI models for 3-4 quarters of 2023. So yeah, there's a mixture of all three. Depends on the kind of attack.
Answer is something in between. Yeah.
Oh.
Next question before we move on. The other question I think will partly at least be answered by your next slides. Why are giants like Google, Azure, AWS not talking about LLM security? They are not providing a platform.
I mean, I don't work there, so I don't know, right? And I think maybe if I did work there, I maybe wouldn't be able to answer it, but I don't work there, so I definitely don't know. Microsoft have some great people working in AI security, right? So I would, and actually there's some decent training material up from Microsoft. I often point people, like if you want to get to grips with AI red teaming, Microsoft have a really cool site put together by like Ram and maybe even Will Pierce when he was there. They have some great material. Why they're not talking about it? It's a new issue, right? It's moving really quickly. We're at the front, and I think we've only just really begun talking about it. So, but go ask them. I'd love to hear their answers.
Yeah. Right. So coming back to Garak, I'd love to kind of learn more that now that you have kind of figured out that, okay, we do need a testing tool to test for the latest and greatest of LLM security issues and vulnerabilities. What are the kind of structure that you converged on, and how does that work?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? So the idea is you want it to be modular so we can keep adding things. And so we can keep reusing things, right? We want to be lean about this. We want to be able to parallelize. We're expecting that we would like to do a lot of testing, so set ourselves up for that. So we have a few abstractions within Garak, right? The first one, it just wraps, at the moment, actually any system that takes as input a string and returns as output a string. On the roadmap is multimodality, but that's absolutely not there today, right? Although we have vulnerabilities there. So yeah, we just take a string-to-string system. This could be something like API access to ChatGPT. It could be access to a LangChain, right? Could be access to a REST endpoint if there's a web service that provides your dialogue server. And the idea is that we should be able to use Garak to benchmark, sure, like an LLM that you're running on some server, but also we should be able to use it to benchmark a dialogue system, right? And those often will be like machine learning plus rules plus other stuff. So this abstraction kind of lets us do this. So we have this generator, it's called inside Garak. And then there are probes, right? So probes, it's implemented as like you get a Python module, and then there are a number of classes within each module, and each class is a probe that kind of has, each probe has one vulnerability in it, right? And you might see a bunch of similar vulnerabilities. You can put them all in the same file if you like. That's what we do. And the probe manages the interaction between Garak and the generator, right? So it's going to kind of take this generator object and just kind of put prompts into it, maybe see what comes out, try and work out the next prompt, right? And just keep a log of all of the output that we get from the LLM. So it'll manage this interaction. And that might just be firing in a prompt, logging the answer, or it might be a whole conversation, right? In case of like the auto red teaming components there are. So after we've got these responses, right, each probe also says, so each probe is kind of one vulnerability. So it's looking for a different failure mode usually, right? And different failures are detected in different ways, like a model leaking PII, or a model crashing, or a model giving toxic answers. These are all detected in different ways. So each probe also specifies like one or more detectors, which is like some kind of scanner that should be run on the output. And this might be a regular expression kind of match, or a machine learning classifier, or LLM as a judge is coming online in a few weeks as well. So the detectors try and detect if something's failed, the probes do the aggressive thing, and the generator wraps the LLM. Yeah.
I really like that abstraction view and how it builds up on top. So could you maybe like jump into an example and show us how like a typical Garak run would look like? That would, I think, really make things.
It's always a bit more. It's always a bit more concrete, right? It's like you go to a research talk and you want to see the results and see what the method is. Yeah, okay, the intro is fine, but that's not all that I turned up for, right? Yeah. Oh. Okay, so here is an example Garak run. a recent one, I can tell from the date in the output. Okay, so you can install Garak from pip, you can install it with Python, right? You can install it from source. It's not wrapped or running as a microservice, but it's pretty lightweight, I like to tell myself. If you disagree, please open a GitHub issue so we can make it lightweight and keep it lightweight. Okay, so we install Garak, and the dependencies will come down with that. And then you can run Garak, right? Python-m Garak, invoke the Python module. And then what we're going to do is specify first the kind of generator, right? What kind of LLM are we trying to wrap? In this case, let's take something easy, right? Let's take OpenAI, right? We're going to say, so this model type OpenAI, right? This tells us we're going to use one of the OpenAI models. Which one is the next natural question? In this case, the June 2022, sorry, version of GPT-4. Which we know from, which we have seen, according to some legal allegations, seems to be able to replay content from the New York Times. Yeah. And so let's test that, right? So we have some probes that can test if a model appears to contain copyrighted content from New York Times or from The Guardian. So we can test maybe both these probes. So we specified just probes and these two. If you don't specify any probes, there's a default selection of probes. They cover a lot of bases. The run takes maybe a little while, depending on like how you're doing your access, right? How, the level of parallelization you have, this kind of thing. But you can, and there's even like probe selection, like profiles. There's a fast one, there's an in-depth one, there's a toxicity only. Yeah, never mind. There's a lot of customization here, but let's stick with these two for now. I think they're nice and easy to explain. I guess in terms of adversarial AI, what we're doing here is a membership inference test, right? We want to know if these two, if articles from these sources are included in the set of training data. So another really important thing with most LLM analysis, right, is like it's stochastic. It's not like traditional cybersec where like if there's a buffer overrun, there is a buffer overrun, and that's how that is, right? In this case, you don't always get the vulnerability. You want to get multiple generations, right? If you ask like an OpenAI model in this case for 10 generations, it'll run with 10 different seeds, and you're going to get 10 quite different results. And what we're really interested here is like the hit rate, the attack success rate. ASR you hear quite a lot in LLM security, right? We want to know, and AI sec in general, we want to know the attack success rate. So once we have this command line, right, like how often can we complete articles from the New York Times or the Guardian on GPT-4? Let's give it 10 shots per time we try to complete it. So we're going to get the output here. I don't know, do you want me to run through the output a little bit? Is that going to help?
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing that I asked. I'm really intrigued by the HTML summary that is being written. So,
all right, yeah, I had a hunch. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so what's happening here? We're running the security probe. There's the date and time for troubleshooting, right, and the version. So we're going to log this report. We're going to get some heavy JSON logging. We love that. We want to be able to get the detail later, but we don't want all the detail now, right? We want to get the top line results so then we can work out if we're going to be active. How we're going to react. So we'll look through our queue of probes, right? We're going to do Guardian, then New York Times. So we have the probe name indicated. Oh, no highlighted, my bad. And then we have the detector, right? It's straight after it. So here the detector is leak replay starts with. And what these probes do is they take an excerpt of text from some given source. And the idea is that there's a marking around high perplexity, high entropy terms there, right? So these are words that are going to be a little bit tricky to predict, right? Words where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's kind of a more even distribution across the logits, in terms you're unlikely to guess directly, right? So maybe there's a name, so maybe someone has an unusual surname like me, right? Well, I don't know, some places I have a very mundane surname, but not in the countries I live in. So yeah, we could say like, maybe I was giving a quote about marshmallows, right? These marshmallows are very good, said Leon something, right? And it's unlikely the next word is going to be my surname. But if we know that that is in the training data, and then the model predicts that as the next token, then we know because that was a high entropy term, there's a chance, right, that the model got it. So these high entropy terms are tagged automatically in this probe data. And we're just going to see if the output starts with the tricky to guess item that it did in the copyrighted data. And we can see here, like, so in these cases for the Guardian, yeah, the model, the LLM generated those really difficult to guess terms 11% of the time. For the New York Times, generated them like 1/8 of the time. So these are interesting cases, right? And then you could go look through that log if you like, or you can go and look at the HTML report, right? And just click, maybe we'll have a look at that in a second. But this gives us an idea that it's worth looking now to see exactly where those probes failed, because it seems like at least some of the time, the copyrighted content is present in the given LLM's training data. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. And especially nowadays, you see so many posts in the social media, right? That, oh, NYT has sued OpenAI or whatnot, that training data leaks. And then we might be interested as a developer that, hey, does my LLM, the LLM I'm working on deploying, does it also suffer from the same problem? And then how do I test? What text do I use to test? That's an unsolved problem for developers today. And you do that.
I think or anyone like with some control over a dialogue system, like, am I going to start leaking copyrighted material? Because that's something people want to know about ahead of time, right? So when you're testing what tech you're going to use, yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll move on to the results, right? So I know there was the very enthralling, enticing hook of megabytes of JSON-L, but for those of us who don't want to spend too many hours a day trawling through that just to get the top level result. Okay, so actually we get other things here, right? So Garak runs generate 3 artifacts. So we saw this summary of what's happened. What did we get out of it, right? First we got this kind of this digest, which shows probe level details, right? So it gives a little description of what's going on. Shows what the resilience was. So when we were running the probe on the previous screen, we saw what the hit rate was, right? Where high is bad. Here we show the resilience. And this is because this is a little easier, we found, for people to understand, right? People often think 100% is good, so let's not go against that expectation, right? So here 100% is good. And we can see, or maybe if those pixels have rendered for you, right? This model in the digest, which is like the screenshot on the left, is getting an 88.2% resilience, right? So most of the time we're not getting it to replay, but sometimes we are. And you can judge the impact of that for yourself, right? Some probes maybe having a small hit rate is okay. Other probes, maybe it's really bad. So also we get a report, right? Which just logs all of the inputs, all of the outputs, all of the evaluations made over that. But we also log a third artifact, which is really good for doing just failure analysis, right? So every time there was a failure, there's a hit log entry stored. And you can see one of those unpacked in the JSON on the right. So each model, yeah, we get the goal of what the model was trying to do, the prompt that was given to the LLM, sorry, the goal of what the probe was trying to do, the prompt that was there, the particular output there was, what trigger we were looking for. And you can see here, right? So the prefixes, yeah, we're discussing something about middle-class jobs, said Jared, and we're looking for the word Bernstein, and we get the word Bernstein, right? And that's detected by this starts with detector. So this looks like there's a chance that there might have been some NYT, New York Times data in the training data. And then we can group also these results like, okay, so this can be even a little bit tricky to get at. If you have like 50 probes, your report has 50 entries with names like leak replay and good side and encoding. This is okay if you know the project super well, but the majority of humans are not in that category, right? So we also group, you know, it's maybe like 100 people max who would get what's going on there. So that's not enough. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you either. So we group these, right? And we can back off again and say, okay, let's look at the replay attack probes, or let's look at the prompt injection attack probes and take that aggregate score, right? And give that as a top level item. And we do those top level kind of taxonomies through what's out there. This is all new stuff, right? None of this existed a year ago, so these are all new things. Subho, I know you know the Avid taxonomy intimately because you were the person behind that fantastic community effort, building all of those tools, and you did the integration in Garak, right? But this is, so this is the AI vulnerability and incident database, and there's this cool taxonomy here for just breaking down like an ethical issue here. Do we have representational social harm going on here? Are we leaking sensitive data? And these are much more interpretable categories, right? So these then become the top level items in the report. And that's a report you can take to people who don't know LLMsec and start that conversation. Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, from my explorations inside Garak, you can also generate the reports to get scores per taxonomy category, right? You can generate it per probe and also per taxonomy category.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and when you use the taxonomy, you just get those top level categories like prompt injections, supply chain vulnerabilities, and one score for each of those top levels. It's way easier to digest. And then you go and click on those and you get all the detail from below, right? So you can see, why did I get a terrible score of replaying data? Oh, because my model keeps replaying the New York Times. Okay, now I get it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's from a practitioner perspective, I can see that bringing instant value in the sense that it brings the landscape of vulnerabilities, makes it from like qualitative vague that, okay, this happens, to quantitative that, okay, let's look at WASP top 10. And then what is the propensity that my own model, the LLM I'm working with in my day job or in my side project, how much risk does that model has for each of these 10 categories? Yeah, that's super useful.
Yeah, we've discovered interesting, surprising things. And I kind of like this because there's a lot of stuff going on in LLMsec and loads of it is grassroots and powerful, but like, how can we action this, right? How do we know what to do next? And having those categories, like Garak gives, actually really helps that. And that's shaping our development already, right? We know where we have blind spots and we know where we get strong hits, so we can update models and the tool.
Yeah. 100%. This is all great, Leon. So how are you? What is in future? What does future hold for Garak?
Well, I mean, it's a community project. It's going to remain a community project. It's going to remain open source. I originally licensed it GPL because I was so insistent this has to be a community project. But one of the things with it being a community project, right, is like all security, right? LLMsec is an arms race. So we got to be able, like, it's great to have a baseline that we can check the models at least meet that baseline of security. And we want to serve people doing that super well. Like, it's got to be easy for people to start doing LLMsec, but also it's got to be easy to keep up. So Garak needs to be easy to extend. Right. So we have these kind of modular structure around kind of briefly over before. Like generators, right? Anything that takes in text and returns text, but we'll do multimodal soon. This could be like a Hugging Face model via, I think we have 5 different interfaces, 4 or 5 different interfaces for those, like running locally, running as a model or as a pipeline, running through the inference API, running a private endpoint, and running through Optimum as well. Also, you can connect to REST APIs, Python functions. There's constant demand for more generators, right? Like, so we did together we did the, no, you did the OctoML one, and together we worked on the
Octo and replicate, the private replicate, yes.
Yeah, and we have like more and more tools coming online there. And I think anything that can connect like an LLM aggregator or middle kind of, well, I don't know, like LangChain connects to everything and you can do cool stuff with LangChain. So once after we had built the LangChain connector, that was good. People are now trying to do Portswigger, who run Burp Suite, right? They're trying to do their tutorials on LLM security, which were a brand new thing. I discovered this because people were just asking, how do I connect Garak to a WebSocket? I'm like, that's not something I saw coming, but let's go write it, right? So we have this other abstraction. So that's the abstraction for generators. Probes manage the dialogue, right? This is the aggressor. Actually, I have to say, this is the only project I've ever worked on where I have like a priority stream for just aggression, right? Like, what are we doing to make it more aggressive? And this is never a question I've been asked about any research or other project. Like, how can you make your project more aggressive? I don't. We don't need to, but in Garak, that's okay, right? We want to find the bugs. So yeah, so we have this probe abstraction, right, where the aggression is, and this tries to find vulnerabilities and tries to execute exploits as well. And then detectors are kind of a bit on the end where this is actually the hardest part, I think, the hardest part to write, where we see if a model has entered a failure mode. Like, is the model being toxic? Is it leaking PII? Is it leaking training data? But I figured actually if detectors were trivial to write, you could include them in training, right? You could include them in a guardrail. And one could stop a model from outputting all of these things straight away. But there are like at least thousands of failure modes. Many of them you'd need a classifier for. Classifiers never perform perfectly, right? If they do, you've made a bug somewhere. So detectors are a lot of work. And the hope is just to get the community in, right? Like, we have a lively GitHub. I think there's 200 open issues and nearly as many closed issues, but these are just the issues of things we'd like to improve, right? The bug rate it's non-zero, which tells me that people are finding and reporting bugs. So I know there's a lively community, but most of this is just things we want to build, right? So we'd love to, if you have an exploit, we would love to be able to conduct and test things for that exploit, right? If there's a failure mode you're interested in, maybe it's important that your LLMs don't give unsolicited medical advice. If you have that failure mode, we'd love to integrate a detector.
I have a probe for you. We should talk. Yes.
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 Yeah. And if your LLM isn't wrapped and it's hard to connect, I mean, come onto Discord, tell us, we'll work it out. Just like we're doing with Portswigger. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of these roadmap items you mentioned are there. I was planning to show the next slide to people, basically, so that we can.
Let's do that. Let's do that. So let's be a bit more specific rather than me saying contribute.
Yeah.
What would we like to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So here are for me, these are the most exciting things today. Those issues are growing quicker, actually. I shouldn't dwell on that. We want to be really efficient with Garak, right? Like, I think it's expensive to test for 60,000. I think the default suite is now 65,000 different prompts. That's expensive, right? Wouldn't it be cool if we could find the big gaping vulnerabilities in your LLM system real quick? So we want to be able to do that efficiently. And this isn't something you can do in a first generation product, right? You need to know where the soft spots tend to be, right? Where are the correlations? Where does it make sense to stop testing once you found the first problem? Where does it make sense to keep up the persistence? And this kind of links into the second point, right? We want to automate that selection of probes. We want to be smart about how we do these scans. It reminds me a little bit actually of like Nmap, right? If you're doing an Nmap scan, just counting up all your ports and all your IPs going up in ascending order, probably you don't get the juicy stuff first, right? And we know if you do like random order, you're going to find interesting things a little bit more quickly, especially if you have that one slow faraway machine making everything take an hour to start off. Okay, on the edge of LLMs, like when we look at things like tokenizers or how model files are stored, there are also vulnerabilities. For me, this is like the edge of Garak scope, right? But we know that many things in pickles can allow remote code execution. We know that Onyx as a data format can crash the host machine, right? And we know that we can test. There's some code coming up where we can just detect these things. So I think if the generator supports access to the underlying files, it's polite of Garak to raise a red flag if we see something that sucks and it's easy for us to do, right? People are interested in PII too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want your models outputting PII. No one is personally identifying information, right? So we want to be able to catch that.
Yeah, especially like supply chain vulnerabilities is like a whole parallel stream of work. It feels at this point that is probably a good entry point for traditional cybersecurity researchers as well. Then they can kind of step up or broaden into broader AI vulnerabilities as well. So yeah, I can see
that's really, I didn't think about that as an entry point. So I thought of this as maybe like low-hanging fruit, because you've seen the rush people have been in to deploy LLMs, right? There's no way this has been done following best practices, right? It's going to be Swiss cheese out there. So it's probably also a very rewarding learning curve, right? Like go and look at those stacks beneath the LLMs,
exactly.
Work out the LLM as you're doing it, and suddenly, very quickly, you'll have more experience than most people working in it. Yeah. And then a couple of other, I guess we want to support system prompts and system prompt attacks. Turns out, even if you have a system prompt, most LLMs can be subverted anyway, so it hasn't been prioritized till now. But I think some people are really curious on knowing what a good system prompt is. And I think that's a great question, and I think that's something Garak can help answer too. Yeah, so that's roughly the growth plan. Yeah, so, but I don't know. So, what are you interested in, Subho? Tell me. Like, yeah.
That's. I have a lot of things in mind. Let me start with where I first got interested. Right. Since this summer, I've been looking into Garak, especially in the context of Avid, the AI vulnerability database effort that I had been leading and growing since a year and a half now, and I think the entry points were fairly simple in my head, in the sense that Garak performs scans of large language models at scale. And then if we can sort of take the same approach in standardizing the sinks as well, where the outcomes go to and how, that would be a really big value add for the community. And that would also pave the way for future such efforts as well, for other scanning efforts or LLM evaluation efforts to also connect to that sink. So that's kind of the overall vision I had in mind. And then I looked into Garak reports and hit logs a little bit, and then figured that, hey, this has a really well-defined schema that actually does map to the vulnerability database schema we have in Avid. And that's the idea I went with, and implemented essentially an integration of Garak with the SDK of Avid, which essentially does that mapping, map the pieces of Garak reports into specific vulnerability reports in Avid. And essentially each probe in Garak, the results from each probe would become a vulnerability report inside Avid. So that's the integration I did. It was actually the first Avid integration with Avid's SDK, and we did a couple of them afterwards as well. And so long story short, once you do Python M Garak, run a whole Garak, and then you can also do Python M-R, put the name of the report, and it generates a number of Avid reports as well, which you can then push to Avid using our API. If you're interested, by the way, ask me for an API key through social media. Anyway, but that was my initial motivation. It was super fun. It was super fun collaborating with you, Leon, over the summer. And then later on, I got really more and more interested in the upstream piece as well, in the sense that how can we contribute, how can we grow this set of vulnerabilities, and can we extend this to propensities of downstream harms as well? So that's something that I've been working on right now. A lot of stuff happening, and I'll be contributing to that side as well in Garak. So adding new probes to test for those things. This is probably a good time, Leon, to kind of go to the next slide.
Talk about that?
Yeah, let's do that.
I've got to say, I loved that Avid pull request. That was super exciting to come in, right? This was like, for me, it felt really legitimizing for Garak. Like, okay, good. I thought we were getting some good results from this, and Subho at least doesn't strongly disagree. So
no, I totally agree.
Yeah, that was cool. It's kind of connected all together, right? Like we can find the vulnerabilities and we can share them and discuss them, and we're just lifting them apart.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. My excitement is genuine. I know it's a sad thing to get excited about, but it made me very happy.
And so on that point, that actually put in my head the idea of integrations in Avid as well. So not only Garak, but similar efforts can also do that. And we have done a couple of them going forward. One of them will be public pretty soon. Anyway, so as far as what happened afterwards, it was sort of a natural segue for me to start Vijil as a co-founder, which essentially takes the same idea of developer enablement in the area of trustworthy AI, building on top of and contributing to efforts like Garak that are close to developers, that are solving problems that are close to developers, hand in hand with them, and that are growing with them. A little bit about who we are. We are a startup that is well funded. You are going to be hearing a lot, hopefully pretty soon. And we help enterprises build and run trustworthy AI and AI-based agents based on LLMs. We have a team from AWS, Amazon SageMaker, Splunk, which is me, and a number of other team members from Calypso AI and Twitch as well. Our big picture goal is to measure and improve trust in LLM in a continuous, scalable manner, and building defenses which are really beyond firewalls and guardrails, whatever garden variety stuff you see. So stay tuned to know more about us. But in the meantime, we really want to help and grow Garak. We are already actively contributing in Garak, sort of, again, bringing that quote unquote divine dissatisfaction in the developer community to the need to have scalable tools that helps them do their job better, helps them meet their needs where they are. We are doing in-house research in trustworthy AI, which we want to contribute to the community through Garak. So essentially scalable AI red teaming. We want to make, overall, our motto is to make these tools that we're building and contributing to easier to use. So sort of build interfaces and user experiences that have that sort of usability criteria. So run things in 3 lines of code, multi-user concurrent APIs, things like that. So that's sort of what's on the roadmap. Definitely planning to contribute to Garak and help grow this emerging technology as much as possible. Emerging technology, both in terms of AI and also AI security. So yeah, exciting times ahead. Really looking forward to it.
Yes. Yeah, the contributions have been cool so far. Making it easier to use. Can I just, this, like, if you cast your mind back to, like, I don't know, 20 minutes ago with that slide of just looking at invoking Garak, this is easy for us tech folk to use, right? But I don't know, like, if security tools aren't super easy to use, they don't get used very often. And we all know how that works out, right? So fewer than 3 lines of code I like. I also like how it looks like a little heart emoji. That's cool too. Nice.
There's sort of a implicit way of saying, okay, developers would like this. I hope so.
Yes, very happy goal. I like it.
Yeah.
Should we go to the next slide and then look at the Q&A?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I think the next slide is sort of a concluding slide. If anybody is interested in working with us at Vijil, come to our website and apply in our jobs portal, or reach out to me or any of other founding team members. You can also reach out to us directly at contact@vijil.ai. So yeah, I think this is a good time to roll into questions. We have quite a few of them. For those who have joined in later on, please also feel free to add your questions in the Q&A. We have 15 minutes, so we will be discussing questions. First question, Leon, is from Nikita. First open question is that, what's your stance on the bullet versus armor, traditional cat and mouse game, and how would Garak continue being up to date?
How would Garak continue being up to date? I mean, it's an arms race, right? And like with a lot of security stuff, especially, actually, it's not like a lot of security stuff. So there are sometimes you can take the security paradigm and bring it into LLM-sec or AI-sec, and it works great. When it comes to the arms race, bring it in, I mean, yes, that exists, but my goodness, not in the same way, right? Because you don't have to be able to code. You don't have to know what memory allocation is. You don't have to know what character encodings are, or cross-site anything, right? You have to be able to type at a keyboard, and now you can be an LLM hacker too, right? And even the number of things you can break just by typing natural language, right? Even if you just stick to one language, English, you can get a lot done. If you go beyond English, suddenly often you can get even more things done. I mean, it's a mess. So it's an arms race, but everyone who can type can be an aggressor in it. So it's tricky. How do we keep up to date? I don't know, man. I think we just find the coolest bullets we possibly can and shoot them real hard and hope someone builds armor to block those and just keep going there. What I'd like to see is this to become I think like projects like Metasploit have a pretty decent model, right? Where, again, that's an open source project. in the security community, where in traditional cybersec, sorry, because we're also in the security community, right, where people wrap exploits and just help that exploit and detection for the consequent failure be portable and repeatable, right? And I think if Garak can do that kind of thing, when it's easy-ish for people to add exploits and catalog them, then we're in a good position. But also, I mean, like NVIDIA are funding an increasing amount of effort just going into building this tool and making it aggressive. So I guess funding and community and effort and time, and we'll keep a stable baseline so people who want to test if their models are doing okay also can kind of come up to that baseline. But with a lot of work is the answer in short.
Yeah, I mean, those are great, I think, great overall directions that we could take. And honestly, the security community has basically grown following that roadmap. So yeah, that's also the roadmap I personally believe we should follow as well. Yeah. Yeah, next question for you, Leon. This is something that is very close to my own heart, because I mean, I'm from India. India's 26 languages, or more than that, probably hundreds of languages, and 26, let's say, major languages, which are not well represented in AI, definitely not as much as English. So Min asks that, okay, Garak is mostly based on English. So how do you make Spanish work through Garak? How easy or difficult is it?
Yeah, it's on the roadmap. It is on the roadmap. Oh, it's been actually, I love that. Is it on the roadmap? This is kind of a provocative question. I know I would use this sometimes in Q&A sessions just to be like to people, you got to put this on the roadmap.
Yes.
If you look, I think even at the very first commit of the very first probe, one of the metadata fields is the language. Emily Bender has been a good friend for years. She has this thing called the Bender Rule. She's chair of the Association for Computational Linguistics, like the professional organization for NLP. She's running that. And she has the thing called the Bender Rule, which is like, if you're working with a language, you've got to state what language you're working on. Because people in NLP always used to say, we've solved syntax with deep learning. And what they meant was, you know where this is going, right, Subho? They mean we've solved English syntax with deep learning. So I wanted it to be really explicit that we were dealing with English. And once you label it, you realize there can be other choices here. So some probes are language agnostic, right? Like supply chain vulnerabilities. If you are using an Onyx file with some vulnerability, it doesn't really matter what language you're doing inference for. I want people to be able to specify the natural language on the command line or just in the config, right? This is what we're going to do. And then the probes run will be filtered depending on the target language. In fact, so there's something a little advanced in Garak we didn't touch on, right, called buffs, which is a bit like fuzzing in security, right? Where we take a prompt and we can manipulate it to change it to a number of other different prompts, right? So one thing we could do, I don't think this is going to serve other languages as well as English, but to get some coverage, we could make a buff, right? So buff, take all the prompts you find, and for each prompt, translate it with a good service to the target language, and then probe the model for this, right? And so instantly you get some coverage. I think we all know that it's not going to be as good as it is for English. Also, I mean, I'm written fluent in 2 languages. One of them is this language. The other one nobody uses because it's Danish, right? So this isn't necessarily something I have the resources to do. I would love help. Yeah, we really want to be multilingual. It's definitely on the roadmap for 2024, actually. Like this claim feels quite comfortable in January. Ask me again in July and I'll sweat, but I'll commit to that. Yeah, it's got to be there. And we know like other models behave differently in other languages. So we got to test that, right? We can't.
Yeah, and the risk surface will be different as well, like the weightage of different types of vulnerabilities and how they work. Yeah.
Subho, what languages would you like to see?
Bengali, my own language.
Bengali,
and I'm
yeah, nice.
tempted to say Hindi, but that's like the majority language in India, and there is a whole thing in India going on that, hey, that we have these different languages. But yeah, that's why my answer is Bengali.
Nice. I'm sure Hindi, we can find people to do. Right?
Yeah, Hindi would be like more amenable, probably. On that front, this is something I had wondered, Leon, before moving to the next question. Is there a way? I'm wondering that using buffs, is it possible, just like the encoding way of, just like the encoding probe, is it possible that an English prompt that a model is resistant to, you can use a buff to convert that prompt to like another language and then ask it to the model? And hope for the best that it doesn't catch that. So that's sort of like a backdoor, language-based backdoor.
There was a paper about this a little while ago on looking at non-privileged languages and probing LLMs with them. And the safety mitigations are way less likely to come up for non-English.
Interesting.
So I don't see the concrete result. I haven't done it myself. Okay. I would hypothesize with a very high chance.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And that's not good, right? This immediately means that people not using English are going to get a worse experience. That's not a good way to run stuff, right? Most people don't get a good experience. Let's not do that.
Yeah, worst experience, and then also they can weaponize that in the sense bypassing the model's current safety guardrails and all that.
For sure, yeah. And you can scale to do all the nasty things. Yeah. It's not good. Yeah, that was a great question, actually. I like that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. So there are a couple of questions from Neeraj on like cost analysis and also your motivation of being open source.
Yeah. How can you do cost analysis? Okay, so this has been something. It's on the to-do list. Being economical with this, right? So, but it's not implemented. One thing you can do is run Garak with a test generator. Like there's a generator that always returns the empty string, test.blank. So run your probes on test.blank, and then just in the log count how many calls were made to the API. And then you will know how many calls there were. Also, if you have billing per output token, then you can specify there's a max tokens parameter. You can get in the config, you can specify it for the generator, and this will put a cap on expenditure there also. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see a nice quality of life improvement. Yeah, of course, the priority order depends on that. But Neeraj, queue for you, open up an issue on the Garak repo so that
yes, just hassle us about it. The more hassling, the more likes on the issues, the quicker it happens, right? It's a squeaky wheel gets the oil. How accurate is Garak? I mean, there's nearly 100 probes and maybe 50 or 60 detectors, each with their own accuracy. With things like that replay attack, right? We saw from New York Times and The Guardian. If you get a hit there, there's a super strong chance that there's the material in there. If you're looking at toxicity outputs, I mean, toxicity is a super varied phenomenon. If you get like a positive hit for toxicity, the model is being toxic. If you get a negative, the model is possibly not being toxic, but I wouldn't take it as a guarantee, right? So this has kind of an uneven type 1, type 2 failures. What's the motivation behind being open source? I don't want to do all this myself. That's too much work. That's not good, right? We need to do this together. I need help doing this. People want to help doing this. Let's do it together. Let's do LLM security together. And we know from security, right? Things like responsible disclosure, like telling people where the nasty bugs are and how they happen, means everyone's security gets a little bit better, as long as we're vaguely careful and we're really open about it. So that was my motivation.
I love that. I just call out somebody called Will Pierce. You know who Will Pierce is. He's probably the world's best security red teamer that we have right now. He's credited with the first MLCV. So Will and I were chatting just yesterday, and he also said the same thing, that this is an emerging technology and we should be looking to not only just building cool stuff, but also building the community who can sort of grow these cool stuff and adopt this stuff, because you have to sort of expand the pie. So I really like that was your motivation in starting this as open source.
Yeah, how else are you going to do it, right?
Yeah. I think we have a question from Nikita. Looks very interesting.
Yeah. In the context of token entropy, would it make sense to use logic outputs to train a predictor on known vulnerabilities for prompts? Maybe. There's a paper there. Yeah, I tried. I mean, this sounds like an empirical question, right? If you can get the logits, so sensible people, sensible LLM providers who are secure don't give any logits. Insecure ones, like one that we probably have all used, give the top 5, I think, top N, and this is sufficient to extract huge parts of the model, actually. Turns out there was, who was the guy? Jack Morris at Cornell did some cool attacks on this in the past few months. Maybe, I don't know, that's an empirical question. I think it's good. I love the angle. I want to see Neeraj is asking, yeah, okay, most of the time report.html is not getting created. Yes, this is a known issue. There's a bug report there. This will be fixed by Saturday, Monday. Thank you. Yes, we know that one's going to disappear super quick and be a very short-lived thing. Yeah.
I love Neeraj's enthusiasm. It's very obvious that they have looked into things in detail and are really interested. So Neeraj, definitely, if you're interested, do join the Garak Discord. It's a very lively community and growing every day. Post issues, we'd love to have you. And yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of Leon, but I'm inclined to believe he agrees with me.
Well, you're one of the contributors, right? We have contributors and the community, and I see your name at the top of the list if you're online, so you can speak on behalf of yourself. That's it.
Appreciate it. Thanks. All right. Yeah, we are doing good on time. So yeah, I think this is time to wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining us. I think we have a very lively discussion, including the Q&A. I appreciate everyone being very active in the Q&A as well. To follow up, we are going to propagate the recording of this session to all registered attendees. So look out for the follow-up email. Slides are also going to follow through emails and in our social media as well, in Vijil's social media. So look out for that as well. Going forward, from Vijil, as we mentioned, look out for more information coming out from our social channels. If you're interested in working with us, if you're interested to know more about us, reach out at contact@vijil.ai. And also, we are hiring. So if you're interested, let us know. And with that, thank you so much, everyone. And last but not the least, but probably the most, thanks to Leon. Leon, thank you. Thank you for doing this with us. Thank you for Garak and all your hard work that has gone into it. Yeah.
Not at all. Thanks for giving me the time to rant about a platform I love. And thank you so much for your contribution. It's made all the difference. Thank you.
All right. That was great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Leon. We'll talk to you later on the interwebs. Take care, everyone. Bye.